There comes a moment in life when you stop chasing validation and start chasing purpose. When you stop shouting to be seen and start working to be undeniable, you realize you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Because the truth is, becoming speaks louder than proving ever could. You see, one of the biggest traps we fall into is the silent craving to be seen, to be understood, to be validated. From childhood, we are taught to chase approval, from parents, from teachers, from society. We learn to measure our worth through other people's eyes. We grow up thinking that if others accept us, then we're doing something right. But that mindset slowly starts to eat away at your soul. You begin to live not for yourself, but for the applause that may never come. And the truth is, it's exhausting. You spend your days trying to prove your value to people who might never even see it. You bend, you shrink, you shape yourself just to fit their idea of who you should be. But deep down, you start losing the real you. There's a heavy kind of emptiness that comes from living for other people's approval. You smile when you don't want to. You agree when you don't believe. You hide your pain just to seem strong. You post pictures, share words, chase validation through numbers, likes, followers, comments, thinking that somewhere in there you'll finally feel enough. But you never do. Because no matter how much you prove, there's always someone who won't believe in you. No matter how loud you try to be, someone will always find a way to silence your light. And that's when you realize you can never win a game that isn't yours to play. At some point, you have to pause and ask yourself, who am I really doing this for? Because if the answer isn't for me, for my growth, for my peace, then you've already lost control of your own life. When your worth depends on the reactions of others, you become a puppet. Your happiness is tied to their mood. Your confidence is tied to their words. And your dreams get smaller and smaller every time someone doubts you. You weren't created to live a life of constant explanation. You weren't born to justify your dreams to those who can't even see your vision. Some people will never understand your path because it wasn't meant for them to walk it. They'll question your choices, your timing, your silence. Not because you're wrong, but because they're uncomfortable with the parts of you that refuse to stay small. And if you keep living to prove yourself to them, you'll stay trapped in the same loop, chasing validation, losing yourself. You have to stop living for their validation. You have to stop performing for their applause. Real peace begins when you decide that your purpose is worth more than their opinion. It's when you wake up one day and realize you don't owe anyone an explanation for becoming who you are. You don't owe them proof that you're worthy of love, success, or happiness. You simply are. You were born with value. You don't earn it by impressing people. You express it by being authentic. Think about it. Every time you lower your voice just to be liked, you dim your own light. Every time you let their rejection define you, you give them power they never deserved. Every time you explain your worth, you forget that it was never up for debate. You are not in this world to convince anyone that you belong here. You are here to become everything you were meant to be. When you stop living for approval, something shifts. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You start creating from a place of peace. You no longer need them to understand your journey because you finally understand yourself. And that's where the real freedom is. When you can stand alone without feeling empty. When you can walk away from validation and still feel full. That's when you truly become powerful. You'll notice that when you no longer chase validation, people's opinions start to lose their power. You won't react to criticism the same way. You won't be shaken by doubt. You'll hear their words, but they won't touch your peace. Because when your confidence is rooted within, no one can take it away from you. You'll stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do I like who I'm becoming? You'll stop proving and start becoming. And the irony is, the moment you stop trying to impress people, you become the kind of person everyone notices. Your silence, your peace, your confidence, and it speaks louder than any performance ever could. People will start to wonder, what changed? And the answer is simple. You stopped needing them to see you, and you started seeing yourself. There's incredible power in that shift. Because once you find peace within, the noise outside no longer matters. You stop competing. You stop explaining. You start growing quietly. You move differently. You think differently. You act differently. You stop reacting to every opinion because your energy is too valuable to waste on proving anything. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to convince, to prove, pause. Take a breath and remind yourself, I'm not here to prove. I'm here to become. You don't need to tell people what you're doing. You don't need to show them your progress at every step. Just let your growth speak for itself. In the end, the people meant for you will feel your energy. The right ones won't need proof, they'll just understand. The wrong ones won't see it no matter what you do. So stop performing for people who were never meant to applaud. Save that. You know, there comes a point in life where you get tired. Not physically, but emotionally. Tired of trying to explain yourself. Tired of proving your intentions. Tired of justifying your path to people who were never really listening. You start to realize that no matter what you do, some people will never see your heart clearly. They'll misunderstand you, twist your words, and doubt your reasons. And the harder you try to make them understand, the more you lose yourself in the process. It's a painful truth, but one that sets you free once you accept it. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your growth, for your healing, or for your silence. The moment you start defending your peace to others, you begin to sacrifice it. You start questioning your own direction just because someone else can't see where you're headed. But remember this, not everyone deserves a front row seat to your transformation. Some people only want access to your energy, not your evolution. They'll ask questions not to understand, but to judge. And if you keep explaining yourself to them, you give them the power to delay your growth. You have to stop letting people's confusion become your burden. You have to stop over-explaining yourself to those who have already made up their minds about you. Because truthfully, no amount of talking will convince someone who doesn't want to understand. When people see you growing, becoming better, pulling away from old habits or old circles, it threatens their comfort. Your change reminds them of what they're not doing. And instead of celebrating you, they'll question you. You've changed. They'll say it like it's a bad thing. But you know what? You're supposed to change. You're not meant to stay where you once suffered just to keep others comfortable. Every version of you that's outgrown something has been misunderstood by someone, and that's okay. Because growth isn't meant to be public. It's not something you have to announce or prove. The most powerful transformations are silent. The kind where no one claps, no one congratulates you, no one even notices, but you feel it deep inside. You start walking differently, thinking differently, responding differently. That's the kind of growth that lasts. Sometimes silence is your greatest answer, not because you don't have anything to say, but because you no longer need to explain what peace feels like. You no longer need to argue your worth. When you reach that point, you start protecting your energy like it's sacred. You stop giving everyone access to your thoughts, your emotions, your next move. You realize that the less you explain, the stronger your presence becomes. People start wondering, what's different about them? And it's simple. You stopped talking and started becoming. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means wisdom. It means you've learned that proving your worth is a waste of the time you could be using to live your worth. You've learned that people who truly value you don't need explanations. They just know. And those who constantly demand proof, they'll never be satisfied no matter how much you give. When you stop explaining yourself, you also stop apologizing for who you are. You stop feeling guilty for prioritizing your peace. You stop dimming your light just because it makes others uncomfortable. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from living unapologetically, from walking away from conversations that no longer align with your energy, from not reacting to every opinion thrown your way. Think about it. How many times have you exhausted yourself trying to justify your dreams to people who don't even believe in their own? How many times have you tried to explain your healing to someone still addicted to their own chaos? You can't make them see what you see. You can't make them feel what you feel. Their inability to understand isn't your failure, it's their limitation. So the next time someone questions your journey, remember this. You don't have to convince them. Let your results speak. Let your peace speak. Let your consistency speak. The loudest proof of who you are is not in what you say, but in what you become. The world might not understand your silence, but they'll feel your presence. And one day the same people who doubted you will see how far you've come. And they'll realize that while they were talking, you were evolving. Don't waste your energy explaining yourself to those who never really listened. Save it for becoming the version of yourself that doesn't need to. Because your energy is too sacred, your purpose is too important, and your time is too precious to be spent proving what was already true. Keep your peace quiet. There comes a moment in life when you realize something powerful. You're no longer chasing validation. You're no longer living to prove yourself to people who never truly cared to understand you. You stop explaining, you stop defending, and you stop trying to be seen. Instead, you turn all that energy inward, into becoming. Because at some point, you learn that growth doesn't need an audience, and transformation doesn't need to be announced. You start to understand that real strength is silent. It's in the way you evolve quietly, while everyone else is still talking about the old version of you. When you stop needing to prove your worth, you free yourself from one of life's heaviest chains, the opinions of others. Think about it. How many dreams die because someone was too busy trying to convince others they were good enough? How many times have we hesitated to take a step forward because we were scared of being judged or misunderstood? The truth is, when you live for validation, you build your house on the sand of approval, and every time the tide changes, you lose yourself trying to rebuild it. But when you live from conviction, you build your house on rock, solid, unshakable, because it doesn't matter who doubts you anymore. You know who you are. This is the shift. The shift from proving to becoming. It's the moment when you stop performing and start transforming. You no longer chase to impress, you grow to express. You stop waiting for someone to notice your progress, because your purpose isn't about being seen, it's about being true. And when you truly understand that, life becomes so much lighter. You stop explaining why you're distant, why you're quiet, why you're changing, because you know that people who genuinely understand your vision won't need explanations. They'll feel it in your energy. They'll see it in your consistency. You see, becoming isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's not about showing everyone how far you've come. It's about rising in silence and letting your results do the speaking. It's the person who used to overthink every step, now walking confidently in their lane. It's the one who used to beg for acceptance, now finding peace in solitude. It's the one who was once overlooked, now operating on a level that can't be ignored, not because they screamed for attention, but because they outgrew the noise that once distracted them. There's something sacred about this kind of growth. It's internal, invisible at first but undeniable later. It's in the late nights you spend working on yourself while no one's watching. It's in the quiet prayers you make when you're tired of pretending you're fine. It's in the moments of pain that you no longer post about, because you've learned to let your scars teach you, not define you. That's what becoming means. It's no longer about being liked. It's about being aligned. And when you live in alignment and when your actions, intentions, and values begin to match, you stop worrying about being understood. People may still misjudge you. They may call you distant, arrogant, or different. But that's okay. You're not who you were. You're not here to prove your old self wrong. You're here to build your new self strong. You've learned that the version of you that constantly needed reassurance was never free. They were trapped in the noise of opinions. Now silence is your power. Focus is your weapon. Growth is your revenge. So, my friend, don't waste your breath explaining your vision to those who can't see it. Don't drain your energy proving your worth to those who can't feel it. The people who truly matter won't need proof. They'll see your growth when it blooms. The rest will only notice when it's too late. Every step you take toward becoming the best version of yourself is proof enough. You owe no one explanations for your evolution. Remember, the greatest proof of who you are isn't in your words. It's in your becoming. Stop proving. Just become, and let your silence speak louder than their doubts. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make in life is not to speak, but to stay silent. Silence is not weakness. It's not retreat. It's transformation in progress. When you stop reacting to everything, when you stop defending every move, and when you stop explaining every decision, that's when you truly start growing. Because silence isn't the absence of power. It's the presence of control. There comes a point in your journey when words no longer serve you. You realize that no amount of explaining will ever make someone understand the battles you're fighting within. You could tell them your story 100 times, but they'd still see it through the limits of their own perspective. So instead of wasting your breath proving, you use your energy improving. You stop talking about what you're going to do and you start doing it. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. You see, silence has a strange way of confusing people. Those who once underestimated you begin to wonder what you're up to. Those who used to criticize you start to question if they were wrong about you. And the people who used to doubt your strength begin to notice that your stillness isn't weakness, it's focus. Because while they were busy talking, you were busy becoming. You were building something real, something unshakable. When you choose silence, you stop feeding noise. You stop responding to drama. You stop arguing with those who only want to misunderstand you. Instead, you start observing. You learn, you grow. And without even realizing it, you start becoming someone who no longer needs to prove their worth, because their presence says it all. There's something deeply powerful about a person who no longer reacts emotionally, but moves with purpose. There will always be people who misread your silence. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become cold. But what they don't understand is that silence doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've learned to control what deserves your energy. You no longer fight battles that don't matter. You no longer chase people who left. You no longer try to fix what's meant to fade. You let your peace speak for itself. And in that stillness, something incredible happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. Because let's be honest, the world is loud. Everyone's shouting for attention. Everyone's trying to prove something. But very few are at peace with themselves. The loudest people often have the weakest foundations because they need to be heard to feel seen. But when you're truly grounded, you don't need noise to validate your worth. You don't need applause to confirm your progress. You don't need anyone to announce your greatness, because you already know what you're building in silence, and that's the beauty of growth. Real growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream, "Look at me." It simply shows up one day, unrecognizable, unstoppable, undeniable. You'll see it in the way you handle pain differently, in the way you respond to disrespect with calm, in the way you no longer chase validation, because you've found purpose. That's when you'll know. Your silence has become your strength. Silence gives you space to create, to listen, to understand. It teaches you patience, the kind that builds empires, not egos. And that's something people won't understand until it's too late. They'll look at you one day and say, "You've changed," but you'll smile because you know you didn't change to please anyone. You evolved to protect your peace. You grew to find your voice in the quiet. You became what they never thought you could be, not because you shouted louder, but because you moved smarter. So when people underestimate you, stay silent. When they doubt your vision, stay silent. When they mock your progress, stay silent. Because soon your silence will turn into something they can't ignore. Results. The kind of results that don't need an explanation. The kind that speak louder than every rumor, louder than every doubt, louder than every "you can't." In the end, silence is not about being unheard. It's about letting your actions speak for you. The ones who laughed will fall quiet. The ones who doubted will start to wonder. And the ones who ignored you will finally see what your silence was building all along. Let your silence be your message, because when the time comes, it will speak louder than any words ever could. There comes a stage in your journey where your growth no longer depends on what others think of you, but on what you quietly build within yourself. You stop measuring your worth by who claps for you, who notices you, or who validates your progress. Because when you truly start evolving, you understand that real change doesn't need witnesses. It just needs consistency. And that's where your transformation begins. Not in the spotlight, but in silence, when no one's watching, when no one's cheering, when it's just you versus the person you used to be. You see, many people are obsessed with being seen. They want recognition before results. They want applause before achievement. But the truth is, the most powerful versions of ourselves are built in seasons of invisibility. Those moments when you're working quietly, when no one's asking how it's going, when no one even knows you're still trying, that's when you're actually becoming. Because growth happens in private long before it ever shows in public. The roots always grow before the tree does. There's something sacred about those hidden seasons of life. They test your discipline. They test your faith. They ask, will you keep going even when no one cares? And if you can say yes to that, if you can keep showing up even when it feels like no one's watching, you've already separated yourself from the crowd. Because most people only give their best when they're being seen. But the ones who quietly become, they don't need an audience to keep moving. Their motivation comes from purpose, not attention. And that's what maturity is, shifting from proving to becoming. You no longer do things for recognition, you do them for growth. You no longer crave applause, you crave alignment. You stop caring about being liked and start focusing on being real. It's a quiet transition, but it changes everything. Because once your focus moves inward, you become unstoppable. No distraction, no opinion, no doubt can shake someone who's anchored in purpose. Think about it. Every great transformation begins in silence. The seed doesn't announce that it's growing beneath the soil. The butterfly doesn't broadcast its struggle inside the cocoon. The process is unseen, but the result is undeniable. That's exactly how your life works. The unseen effort, the unseen pain, the unseen hours, they're all building something that will one day speak for itself. But you have to be patient enough to let it unfold. You can't rush becoming. You can't fake evolution. You can't post your way into purpose. The world might tempt you to share every small step, to prove that you're moving forward. But the truth is that what's real doesn't need constant validation. You don't need to convince anyone of your growth when you're living it. You don't need to prove that you're healing when your peace is already showing. You don't need to explain that you've changed when your energy speaks louder than your words. Sometimes disappearing for a while is exactly what your soul needs. Not because you're running away, but because you're returning to yourself. When you step back from noise, you start hearing your intuition again. You start remembering what really matters. You stop chasing recognition, and you start chasing depth. And that's when you realize that becoming doesn't mean being seen. It means being whole. You'll notice as you grow, fewer people will understand you. Some will say you're distant. Others will say you've changed. And they'll be right. Because you have changed, it's not for them, but for you. You've stopped seeking approval from the world that once made you doubt yourself. You've stopped explaining why you want more out of life. You've stopped letting people define your limits. And now you're simply walking your path, quietly, confidently, intentionally. And you know what happens next? Those same people who once ignored your journey will suddenly notice your results. They'll say, "You got lucky," without realizing how many silent battles you fought. They'll admire the light but never understand the darkness it took to build it. That's the irony of growth. By the time they notice, it's already too late. Because while they were watching others, you were busy becoming something extraordinary. So, if you're in that season right now, where no one sees your effort, where your progress feels invisible, where your dreams seem too far away, remember this: you're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're just in the becoming stage, and that's the most important stage of all. Don't rush it. Don't announce it. Just keep building. The world doesn't need to see your process. They'll see your transformation when it's time, because when you finally arrive, when your growth becomes visible, when your peace becomes undeniable, you won't need to prove a single thing. The world will see the difference. Not because you told them, but because you became it. Don't fight to be seen, fight to become. Because once you become, you'll never need to prove again. There comes a time when your silence becomes louder than your explanations, and your transformation becomes the only answer anyone needs. You reach a level where words are no longer required, where your actions speak, your energy speaks, and your growth becomes undeniable. You stop trying to prove, to convince, to defend your dreams. You simply become. Because the truth is, people don't believe what you say. They believe what you show. You've spent so much of your life explaining yourself, why you're changing, why you're distancing yourself, why you want more. You've tried to make people understand your vision, your hunger, your discipline. But here's something powerful to realize. Not everyone is meant to understand your evolution. Some people can only see you as the version they once knew. And no matter how much you explain, they'll still hold on to that outdated image of you. That's not your problem. You don't have to drag them into your new chapter when they still belong to your old one. Because your growth is not a debate. It's not a negotiation. It's a process. You don't owe anyone an explanation for evolving, for outgrowing, for choosing peace over chaos, purpose over comfort, and alignment over approval. The moment you stop needing everyone to understand you, you free yourself from the chains that kept you small. That's the beginning of real power, when you no longer need validation to move forward. Think about it. The sun doesn't announce when it's rising. It just shines. The tree doesn't explain how it grew. It just stands tall. The river doesn't justify its flow. It just moves. That's the beauty of becoming. You don't need to announce your growth. You just need to live it, because real change, the kind that lasts, doesn't require attention. It requires authenticity. And when you embrace that mindset, you begin to see how peaceful life becomes. You're no longer wasting energy trying to prove your worth. You're no longer caught up in convincing people that your dreams are valid. You just walk your path. You do your work. You stay consistent. And over time, your results become your voice. People who once doubted you will start asking how you did it. Those who laughed will grow quiet. And those who underestimated you will finally understand that you never needed to prove anything. You just needed time. It's strange how life works. When you chase validation, it runs from you. But when you focus on becoming, validation starts chasing you. That's because authenticity has gravity. When you are aligned with who you truly are, when you move with purpose, confidence, and quiet strength, people feel it, even if you never say a word. Your presence starts speaking for itself. And yes, some people will still misunderstand your silence. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become distant or arrogant. But that's only because they can no longer access you the way they used to. You've grown beyond their version of you, and that makes them uncomfortable. But that discomfort is not your burden to carry. Because silence isn't arrogance, it's focus. It's knowing that your time, your energy, and your peace are too valuable to waste explaining what's already written in your actions. You start realizing that not every battle deserves your response. Not every opinion deserves your attention. The people who truly see your heart don't need explanations, and the ones demanding them won't believe you anyway. So why waste your breath? Let your work, your discipline, and your transformation speak instead. That's the language of growth. Quiet, consistent, undeniable. There's a certain strength that only silence teaches you. It's the strength of restraint, the strength of patience, the strength of peace. You learn to trust timing. You learn to trust yourself. You learn to move in silence and let success make the noise later. Because real power doesn't shout, it simply is. You become the calm in the chaos, the stillness in the storm, the example that others eventually notice and admire. And here's the thing. When you reach that place, you no longer even care if they notice. You're too busy living, growing, creating. You've stopped performing for the world and started becoming for yourself. That's where true fulfillment lives, not in being seen, but in being aligned. You understand that proving was never your purpose. Becoming always was, so stop explaining who you're becoming. Stop defending your journey. Stop needing anyone's permission to grow. Let your silence be your strength, your consistency be your answer, and your evolution be your proof. Because one day, when your peace, your confidence, and your success begin to shine, they'll finally see it. They'll realize what your silence was saying all along. But by then, you won't need them to understand anymore. You'll already have become everything you were meant to be. You don't need to prove. You don't need to announce. Just keep becoming until your existence speaks louder than your words ever could. You don't have to convince the world, just become so real, so consistent and so focused that your growth becomes the loudest statement of all. Don't prove, just become.